Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to In the Fighting Chair. This is our first live stream video. It's an interview series called In the Fighting Chair that I conceptualized a year ago that I originally wanted to do with folks right here in Living Sharks Museum, just covering all different kinds of topics from sharks, shark science, shark history, to conservation, and repurposing the fighting chair for some positive topics. But given today's state of affairs, we are doing this from a distance. So this is our social distance interview series for the time being, and I'm really lucky to have Wayne Davis here today. He's a spotter pilot and a photographer who's captured amazing images of migratory fish, not just in New England, but around the world. And today we're going to talk a little bit about that and explore his work with Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. So I'm going to bring in Mr. Wayne now.
Hi, Keith. How you doing?
Good, good. Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So it's been a while since I've seen you in person, but you did have an opportunity to stop in to Living Sharks Museum and visit.
What did you think? Is a terrific thing that everybody should visit. It's great.
Thank you. Here at Living Sharks Museum, we are covering a lot of shark history, again, from all over the world, not just New England. And it's an opportunity to speak about sharks in as many capacities as we can. Of course, a lot of shark history is visual, and that's where Mr. Wayne comes in. As a photographer, he's bringing us visuals that we've never been able to see before. From a boat, you can only see so much in the waters of Cape Cod. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a whole different point of view. As soon as you get up in the air a little bit, it's much better.
Now, about how high up do you remain when you're observing sharks along the coast of Cape Cod?
It all depends on the weather, the sky, but give or take 1,000 feet. Sometimes a lot more if it's a overcast day, or even a lot higher if it's a perfect day, real blue sky, no wind. So give or take 1,000 feet.
I've had the lucky opportunity of being on Atlantic White Shark Conservancy's vessel, for their expedition Sharks and Whales. And you were up in the sky, of course, spotting the sharks for us, spotting the whales for us. How often do you do that for Atlantic White Shark Conservancy?
Well, the first 5 seasons we did it. We did two research trips per week. But last summer we changed the format a little bit. We went to one, and on 3 other days of the week I was finding sharks for an eco tour from the Chatham Bars Inn. That was 3 days a week and 2 trips a day.
So is this your full-time job now?
Yeah, but I don't call it a job. It's what I've always done, and it's what I like to do, and it's like my dream retirement job, really.
Now you started doing this back in the early 70s, like 1973, is that right?
Yep, 73 is the first year I began fish spotting for swordfish.
Now, had you flown before that?
No, I learned to fly in 73 with the purpose of being a fish spotter, and I was a very, very green rookie when I started fish spotting. I had almost no flying time. Still alive today, so did something right, I guess.
I guess so. Where did you get the inspiration to even do that?
Well, I grew up in a fishing village, Galilee, Point Judith, Rhode Island, and as a fisherman's son, fishing family, fishing neighbors, I went fishing. And as even younger than a teenager, I think my first really offshore experience was on a swordfish trip, probably in, I don't know, late 50s or so. And if you've never seen a swordfish in the water before, you can't you don't know, but sword fishing is pretty exciting. It's like you're out in the wild blue, and these wild animals swimming around. It's like you're in prehistory out in the ocean, seeing things that hardly anyone gets to see. Just exciting. And I was a post World War II kid, so was raised watching the boob tube, war movies, airplanes. I was always intrigued with airplanes, so the two kind of joined. And back then, like all through my teenage years, it was the early days of the pioneers of swordfish spotting, and I got my inspiration from a couple of fish spotters who were my parents' generation, and just figured I should do that. So
Were
I
there
did.
a lot of people spotting at that time?
No, there were only a few. Late '60s, correction, late '50s through the early '60s, and through the '60s, and then by the time I became an adult, worked hard fishing, on deck as a deckhand for several years, and saved up some money. Thought I should learn to fly and buy an airplane, so that's what I did.
Now, you served in the Army in Vietnam, is that true?
Yeah, but I didn't fly over there. I was not a flyer over there.
So this really did kind of come out of the blue for you.
Yeah, oh, it definitely did. When I got out of the Army and went back fishing, of course, and sword fishing in the summertime. That was in the early days of the big time swordfish spotting. That's where I got my inspiration. Figured that's what I had to do, so I did it.
And you bought your own plane. It's a little two-seater, single-engine plane.
Yep, it's a Tabrea. It's kind of like most people are familiar with the Cubs, Super Cubs, same thing. Tandem seating, fore and aft, long endurance, highly efficient, and so that's what you got to have to do the job.
And you're able, with that plane, you're able to stay up between 12, 13 hours at a time?
Yep. Yeah, my longest flight ever is 13 hours exactly. A lot of 12-hour days.
Yeah, that's a lot of time with your head hanging out the window.
It's what you do. It's always exciting.
But when did you decide to stick the camera out the window?
Well, I did even as early as probably mid to late '70s, but wasn't really serious about it. And of course, that was back in the days of film camera, so you only had 36 shots. You had to be very careful with each one. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't nearly as efficient and easy as it is now. Since digital has become so prevalent.
Yes. If you want to get an opportunity to see some of Wayne's shots, of course, definitely visit his website, oceanaerials.com. And he's got some amazing images there, not just of sharks, even though today we're going to focus on sharks, but huge schools of tuna and billfish, some amazing images that he's gotten. Now, you don't have any one particular favorite image, do you?
Yeah, I think I do. I think you may not even have it. It's a shot of a swordfish looking directly down on it, and the swordfish is in like aqua blue-green water out on the edge of the Gulf Stream, southeastern Nantucket, 100 miles, looking straight down on a swordfish. I wish I had sent that to you. Yeah, it's among my favorites.
Now, did you ever get shots of sharks before your time with Atlantic White Shark Conservancy?
Oh yeah, yep. An occasional, a matter of fact, a rare white shark now and then, but plenty of blue sharks and tigers and makos offshore.
Now, did you know a lot about sharks and these different apex predators just from fishing, or did you learn as you went?
Yeah. Just, I do a little reading. I like reading science stuff too, but just from being a fisherman and looking at them, from the air over the decades. They're always out there, so just a little interesting sight as you're flying around.
I wanted to bring up this image just to kind of give you an idea of Wayne's vantage, what he's able to see from the air. Not only is Cape Cod a beautiful place with changing waters and winds and sands, colors, there's a lot of research going on there right now, particularly with great white sharks. For those of you who don't know what Atlantic White Shark Conservancy does, or Dr. Greg Scommel from Mass Marine Fisheries, they've been working on multiple 5-year studies trying to figure out the population of great white sharks along Cape Cod, which we're hearing so much about, of course, in the news. Now that we're able to tag sharks, we're hearing back from sharks like a telephone call. So when we get those calls, they tend to make the news. So we're hearing about sharks more than we really ever have. But from the boat, you can only see so much. And Wayne has the ability to get up in the sky and give them another visual. And your process, how do you get Dr. Scommel to the shark?
Well, first you got to find one, and then let the boat know where you are. Sometimes I might be flying directly over the boat, or I might be 20 miles away. If they're down around Chatham Harbor and I'm up near Provincetown or something, give them a call, and they usually come full speed. And when I get them within a couple of 100 yards, I start steering them directly. Come left, come right, or quarter starboard. Give them the distance to the shark and relative position, and usually when depending on the water clarity, when the boat gets within a half a dozen boat lengths, they can pick it up visually, and they go from there. They do it on their own. And as soon as I know that they've found the shark and they're going to do the research on it, I'll just kind of wander off from the side and look for others, and they give me a call back if they lose the shark. But to go out there with a boat without a fish spotter to try to find a white shark, you can do it, but it's really not very easy at all because they're mostly underwater, and most of the time the water around the Cape is not good visibility, although some of my pictures show it almost looks like tropical water at times, really nice and clear. But it's quite difficult to do from a boat on your own to find a white shark.
In this photo, Wayne, obviously we can see the sands beneath. It's a beautiful day. About how deep do you think that shark might have been?
Well, my setup here on my phone that I'm looking at now, he was probably in 4 or 5 feet of water, I'm guessing there from what I can see at a distance. Oh, and that shark was just on the outboard side of that surf there. Probably 6 feet max, maybe even 3 feet, 4 feet.
And in this shot, we can
Matter
see
of fact,
some
it
of the
might have been
beach.
a lot less. It might have been a lot less because the boat was just kind of wandering out on the outside of the surf there because he couldn't get to it. It was probably 3 feet or less. Go ahead, excuse me.
Now this one looks like another very close to shore shark.
Yeah, that's a very common shot. I like to show these to my surfing friends down the Cape. Make them smile and scratch their heads. But it's very, very common, and often even much closer to the shore than that. I like to say within spitting distance.
Yes. Here we can see the shark between shore and the vessel.
Yep, very common sight. A daily sight.
And for being up in the air, these shots are very crisp. And you can see more than just the outline of the shark in this shot. You can see that the fin is actually breaching the water.
Yeah, that's
beautiful
not
shot.
uncommon, but it's very common for them to be totally under. And the thing that does make them come up and show their fins a lot of times is the depth of the water. The shallower the water, the higher the shark's got to go, so that its belly doesn't drag on the bottom. And that's when their fin comes out a lot of times.
So Before your time with Greg Scommel, working with white sharks, you had an opportunity to work with him on basking sharks. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was the Greg and I had known each other for quite a few years, and then he started doing some studies with basking sharks, tagging them and such. And he called me up, and we worked together, chasing basking sharks, mostly around Cape Cod Bay and Provincetown, and that's where Greg and I originally got together. And of course, early 2000s, the white shark showed up, and it went from there.
Now, are there other spotter pilots out there doing this with Dr. Greg or anywhere else that you know?
My predecessor, strictly flying for white sharks was George Breen, one of my oldest fish spotting buddies. But nobody's really doing it directly. I think George now is finding sharks for a budding eco tour trip with local guys on the Cape. But nobody's really, doing anything with white sharks except Dr. Greg and the Conservancy and the gang. It's something that's going to be around for quite a while by the looks of it. And, this seems like more and more every year, and pretty regular.
I think in the 10 years in particular that Dr. Greg's been working, he's been able to tag over 230 individuals off Cape Cod. It's amazing how many sharks are there. A lot of folks don't realize that the sharks have always been there, but we're now getting some of this tracking technology on them, and we're hearing about them more. The other reason why they're there is the seal population. Back in the early days, in the 70s, when you first started flying, were you able to see the difference between the population back then to now?
Oh, it was immense. All in my early, matter of fact, at least my first 20 years of fish spotting, flying out of Martha's Vineyard or Plymouth or the Gulf of Maine, doing a lot of flying over the Cape, but not looking specifically close to shore on the Cape as the white sharks are now. But there were none. They might have been there, but no one ever saw. None of the fish spotters ever saw a white shark close to Cape Cod until like 06 or 08 or something like that. And the seal population wasn't apparent at all that I recall. Of course, I didn't pay a lot of attention to it until like the early to mid 80s when they started getting thick on Muskeget and Tuckernuck Islands, out in Nantucket Sound. I used to fly every day from Martha's Vineyard, from Oak Bluffs over to Nantucket to fuel up, and that's when I started noticing the burgeoning seal population in Nantucket Sound.
I think the recent estimates are close to 40,000 seals in Cape Cod right now, which is a crazy number to think about. Give us a little bit of an idea. Here's one of your shots.
Yeah, well, I've heard anything between 25,000 and 50,000. And, I don't go flying down there like now. We won't start our research again until June 15th. So I don't see it during the molt and when they're pupping, when the beaches are totally lined with them. But I do know from my perspective anyway, my spotting and seeing seals on the Cape, I don't know whether they've just spread out more or they've actually been driven out of the area by the white sharks. What I see in the summer, especially the last couple of summers, there haven't been nearly the big haul out areas of seals that there had been in the past.
Oh, that's interesting.
Noticeably spread out and not nearly as many as in the first 3 years of the study from 14, 15, and 16.
Well, of course, we wonder what the impact of the white sharks are now that they're returning. Maybe this is one of the signs.
I believe so, yes.
So tell us a little bit about tracking sharks and seals together.
Oh yeah, it's well, one goes with the other, but of course my main concern every day when I go out spotting for the Conservancy is to find a shark, and often, you know, pretty much all the time they're within sight of seals or huge numbers of seals, and it's always interesting when a white shark gets in close proximity to the seals, and it looks like a predation might be imminent, and it almost never happens, but everybody gets excited when a shark comes close to the seals. Matter of fact, I think I gave you a little sequence of a predation attempt and a miss by a shark. So I hope you get to show that. But that's always
take a look at that right now.
Yeah, great. Yeah, here you can see the shark approaching from the lower right, and because I was going around and it was sunny that day, I didn't get the entire sequence. But the shark approaches that seal. Shark is in the lower right, gets to the seal, and the seal sees it coming. The seal jumps, easily evading the shark, and the seal whips right around counterclockwise there, and he comes right up on the shark's tail. And by this time, the shark has turned to its left and gone into that turbulence of where the seal jumped. And the shark's looking for the seal in those bubbles there, and the seal's right on his tail. And then the seal just kind of peels off to the right and goes out into the right side of the frame there. And the shark's in the bubbles there, wondering, where'd he go?
One of the tactics we see in seals evading white sharks in other parts of the world is they try to stay very, very close to the shark if they're already too close, just hoping to outmaneuver if possible. And it looks like in this particular case he got away.
Yeah, he outmaneuvered. They're much quicker than the sharks. You know, the way the sharks usually get them is like total surprise.
Well, we also have some footage of predation, so let's take a look at that as well. So this is our first live stream, so we're getting used to the process here. This part is a little clunky. Over there.
There you go.
The telltale red.
Yeah, if you go through this sequence slowly, Keith, I can describe it. The shark on the right, just to the 5 o'clock position from the beginning of that blood plume there, the shark has attacked the seal, and the shark just kind of nonchalantly swims around its prey until the prey bleeds out enough so that it loses all its strength, and then the shark will eat it. But during this sequence, the shark is patiently just swimming around slowly outside, and that other seal came by and just kind of like haphazardly glanced at the dying seal and just kept right on going, which more of the sequence as the research boat gets close.
Now, you haven't actually seen as many predations as maybe you thought you would. How many have you seen in total?
Yeah, I think 20 or a couple dozen maybe in 6 seasons. So that's, but the last couple of years I've seen quite a few more. I think not only because maybe there is more, but because I've developed somewhat of a technique to to be, as opposed to flying around, working with the boat and just looking down and steering the boat to the sharks. I've taken more to looking over my shoulder and looking further up and down the beach as I'm doing that, in hopes of, seeing more activity, another, predation. But when you're steering the boat to sharks, it's very precise. It should be very precise, and you got to pay attention. And usually when I'm doing that, I'm taking pictures too. So to find a predation elsewhere from where I'm looking, it's kind of difficult. So you got to be lucky anyway.
So these are amazing. Of course, these are the things that everybody typically wants to see. Let's see the predator-prey scenario. Very exciting images. But what I love the most about what you're able to bring to the table with your vantage point is you get to show us shark behavior that we might not be able to see from the boat. Can you tell us a little bit more about that multiple shark interaction?
Yeah, I don't know where you are in the sequence here. At one point, in the second or third image in that sequence, it's the perpetrator, the predator, was actually in the blood plume as that second shark approached, and yeah, I think there it is right there. He's coming out of the blood plume there. The one before this, it was actually almost totally concealed in the plume of blood as the second shark approached. But it was, and as many times as I've seen predations up until this time, I never really thought about the fact that I had never seen the standard feeding frenzy that I'd seen as a kid offshore with blue sharks and makos feeding on swordfish entrails and stuff when we're cleaning fish at the end of the day. You'd quite frequently have a blue shark feeding frenzy out there, but nothing like that. I've yet to see anything like a feeding frenzy between, among white sharks on a dying seal. It's just, and it took me a while to figure it out. It was this day that made me realize that these things really aren't fooling with their cohorts dying prey. They don't want anything to do with it. That's what seems apparent to me anyway.
Sure. So you think they're avoiding conflict with one another? Maybe
Yep.
some primal instincts to avoid.
Yep. Not to anthropomorphize, but it's in their DNA to not try to take their friend's meal because somebody's going to get hurt. That's just what I feel. I'm not a scientist, but it seems quite apparent. They just don't fool around with each other's food.
Well, it's a real incredible sequence to see.
Yeah, this day we did this to John King, owner operator of the Aleutian Dream, the research boat. He brought some people out. This was on a non-research day, so our researchers didn't get to see this. Greg and Megan and Cynthia. It was probably the best predation sequence we had ever gotten close to. We had nice clear and shallow water that day with multiple sharks around.
So what do you do on the off season?
I have a winter job as a deckhand on a pilot boat here in Point Judith, serving merchant ships that come and go into the various ports here in southern New England. We bring a pilot out to a ship so he can guide the ship in or pick him up off the ship when the ship is outbound. Very simple. Keeps me engaged on the water. Something to do. Bring my camera. Always fun being on the water.
Do you still fish?
No, hardly ever. I don't think I've probably fished in 3 years, and that was only occasionally somebody will call me up when they're really desperate for a deckhand.
And you used to be a deckhand as a youngster, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I put in my 25 years with manual labor on deck, on a dragger, on a Point Judith. That was my livelihood. That's what I did.
So you have an appreciation for commercial fishing and how it's changed over time. You feel that the methods in use now are better than they used to be?
Yeah, the guys, as a fleet, learned quite a bit. Techniques have changed over the years, but a lot's still the same. They're still mostly using otter trawls, dragging, and despite what the fishermen would say are over regulations, they're doing okay, but it's a bit of a pain for them. The regulations are cumbersome, at least.
I've got a completely different set of questions here that have come in. Of course, we have to talk about Jaws because it's shark history. Did you enjoy that film?
Yeah, it was amusing as a fisherman, as a guy who, when they made Jaws, they made it on the vineyard, and I was flying out of the vineyard at the time, and when it came out, it was quite laughable because one scene they show the boat and the shark and glassy calm water, and 2 minutes later it was blowing 15 knots. So it's kind of amusing from a fisherman's point of view. But yeah, the Jaws was amusing. And as a matter of fact, the scientist in Jaws, of course, was Hooper, and now that's what we've come to be calling Dr. Scommel. He's no better known as Hooper for us. So yeah, it's got some relevance. But the bad thing about Jaws was it really set a wrong tone. I think at least once in the movie, and since then, probably millions of times, people have used the term man-eater. I mean, I've watched sharks swimming up and down the beach now in the Cape this will be my 7th season with the Conservancy, and they're just paddling along at a low idle, minding their own business until they get hungry. And I've seen them swim by surfers, bathers, boaters, and not even glance sideways at them. They're just minding their own business. So, in my estimation, they're not man eaters, and it's part of their DNA to look for something with a lot of caloric intake. At the Cape, it's seals, of course. They're not looking for people.
In 1975, you were up in the air already. You had a couple years under your belt in the air.
Yep.
Did you see anything different after the summer of 1975 as far as how many people were in the water?
No, because back in those days, no, I don't think it really did make much of a difference, because it was rare. I mean, extremely rare for anybody to see a white shark around the beach all back then. There just were not that many of them along the beach, and I didn't even think to look then. And all my days flying back then were way the heck offshore, so I did very little flying. The only flying I did over the beach was on the way out and on the way in. So I didn't notice anything like that at all. But now, down the Cape, people are very aware of the situation.
Yeah, very much so. So we've kind of gone through a hysteria phase from the days of Jaws, of course. I feel like we're correcting that now at this point. And your visuals definitely help because, as a gentleman once said, if all we knew about humans was what we learn about them around the dinner table, then we wouldn't really know much about them at all. And the same goes for sharks. So being able to photograph and get visuals of these animals in their environment in settings that don't always involve predation is very valuable. So thank you for what you do, of course.
Now the old expression, it is my pleasure.
So for the folks that have questions for us, I'm going to make a list of those questions. Oh, here we go. We got some questions coming up. Rich Benson wants to know if you've ever had an unsuccessful day spotting great whites. And
yeah, very, very few. And it's usually in the very beginning of the season. I think that 2014 was the first year, and I think we only saw one in the first 3 days or something like that. But no, very, very few days, very few times when you can't go out and find a pretty good supply of them. Last year we had a pretty slow start. We had a lot of dirty water and less than perfect weather, but not very many 0 days in the white shark search. Not like the old days, and you had a lot of swordfish days, zeros, and spotting tuna fish go for days and days and never see one until you do.
And then another question, what was the most successful 15 minutes of shark spotting in your career?
No, the one time I can think of is probably a few summers ago. It was a day that there were a lot of sharks down in Shark Cove, you know, halfway down Monomoy on the east side. And they were all in very shallow water in a line from mid-Monomoy on the east side all the way down to the south end of Monomoy. And in a straight line, I think it was probably a 3 or 4 minute flight. There was 17 of them in a row, all spaced out pretty much evenly apart between so-called Shark Cove and the south end of Monomoy. So it's 17 in a row. Last summer at one time, I could see like 11 at once. Believe that was in Cape Cod Bay. You know, to be able to see 11 at once, you necessarily can't see them all at once, but they're all within your circle so that you know you're seeing 11 individuals simultaneously. So that was 11 at once last summer. And one day, a couple of 3 summers ago, probably the day that I saw most, I think I had to see somewhere between 60 and 80 in one day. And most of them were from like Nauset Inlet up towards Provincetown.
Another question that's come up from Lisa. What is the largest shark you have ever photographed from the plane?
Oh, I didn't send you a picture of that. It's too bad. It's probably, but it was probably in about 2012. It was chowing down on a dead humpback whale out southeast of Chatham. I forget the name of the shark, but it was a 3,000 pounder. And then I think the summer before last, or maybe even 2017, one non-research day, I got aboard the Aleutian Dream with John King and Cynthia and Ben. We went up to west of Race Point, and there was a dead minke whale up there with half a dozen white sharks on it. And there was one very, very big one there. I might have given you that picture. I took a picture of it standing on the rail of the boat looking down. The shark was 3 feet under my feet. Very big. They're immense. The thing that's most noticeable about them when they swim under the boat is their girth. They're just like a buffalo swimming by or something.
A question from Bill. Can you discuss the size differential in sharks on the backside and in Cape Cod Bay?
Yeah, they're mostly smaller in Cape Cod Bay. We did some research in Cape Cod Bay for the first time last summer, and you see a normal normal size one, 12 feet or bigger. Not that frequently as I recall, but a lot of small ones. I've seen days when there are many, many small ones. I mean, less, 8 feet or less in Cape Cod Bay. But we're just beginning to spend some serious time in there.
I think those are all the questions we have for the moment. So we'll wrap this up a little bit, and we hope to have you on again, Wayne, and see where things are going as the studies progress. Definitely take a look at Wayne's website and see his images, oceanaerials.com, and also visit the atlanticwhiteshark.org for Atlantic White Shark Conservancy to learn a little bit more about what they do, the studies they're involved in, and where things are headed for them. My name's Keith. I am the curator of Living Sharks Museum in Westerly, Rhode Island. I'm fortunate enough to have folks like Wayne here in the fighting chair with me. Please keep an eye out for future events. Our next one will be on Friday with author William McKeever. Very excited about that interview. So please tune in. We'll be saving these interviews and posting them on our museum YouTube. Thank you again, Wayne, and let's chat again soon.
Yeah, great. I'll see you down in Westerly. Thanks for having me. Do it again.
All right.
Thank you.